All right, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, so call to connection, cultivating quality relationships with diverse personalities. So I just want to start out by saying many things will trigger us in the workplace. It's a hotbed for triggers, right? It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you are, personalities will always find a way to get in the way of quality relationships. And for those of you who have been in the workplace for quite a long time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So good morning. My name's Lorraine Williams, and I come to you from, I would normally say I come to you from sunny Florida, but I'm going to say I come to you from the hurricane state, which is Florida. We've had 3 hurricanes in the matter of 8 weeks, and I'm lucky to be standing here probably. So I live in Florida, but I got to Florida by way of Liverpool, England, because that's where I'm born and bred, proud Scouser. So that's me and my 2 little doggies. I've been in IT most of my career, which is actually going on 40 years now, a long time. And the area of IT that I've really practiced in for the longest has been in the network infrastructure space. I've really enjoyed it. The last 18 years of my career has been as a chief information officer. I've been a CIO throughout the United States. And one thing I thought for a long time was I really enjoyed doing things like identifying IP ranges, figuring out the subnet mask that needed to go on the IP range for a network, for the network address, finding the gateway, putting all of that information in, making sure I was pointing to the right DNS. And back in the day when I used to do this stuff, we had primary and secondary DNSs. And I found that stuff so much more enjoyable than I did navigating personalities. Or at least so I thought. Because until I realized that personalities, or communication, if you like, is a skill much like learning subnet masks, then and only then can we get good at it. Communication, folks, is a skill. And I'm going to ask you to, for a show of hands or to raise your hand if you are over a team, if you have direct reports. Anybody in here have direct reports? Okay, there's a lot of us. And communication as a skill is not a nice to have. For those of you who have individuals who report directly to you, it's a must have. It's your responsibility, I'm on my soapbox now, but it's your responsibility to make sure that you know how to communicate well with your people. Right? They are your responsibility. When you are over people, when you have a team of people who report to you, then you become the cultural architect for that team. And it is your absolute responsibility to make sure that you know how to communicate and communicate well. Right? And if you're not doing that, then with all due respect, as we say in the UK, I suggest you start doing it. So what does the skill of communication look like so we can get better at navigating personalities? Well, we need to learn how to show vulnerability. We need to learn how to be curious rather than judgmental. We need to learn how to step into uncertainty. We need to learn and we need to practice on a daily basis how to give feedback. We need to be giving our people feedback. We need to tell them when they're doing something really well, and we need to correct them when they're not. And in a lot of cases, 40 years I've been in the workplace, worked around a lot of people. I'm sure most of you too work around a lot of people. And this is something that I see a huge lack in. People are not communicating well. And when you can communicate well, you will do so much better and you will enjoy working with different personalities. It will get easier. Now, there's a big difference between easier and easy. I never said it's easy, right? It's never going to be easy, but it will get easier. One of the things that I've used in the workplace that has helped me considerably, I want to turn our attention to it, and that is personality assessments. Personality assessment profiles. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to poke the potential elephant in the room, because I know a lot of us are not fans of personality profiles. I know that. I'm aware of that. But I am. I'm a big fan. And that doesn't mean because I am, you have to be. But just let me tell you why I'm a big fan of personality profiles. First of all, they bring awareness to the table. If you've ever done a personality profile, or if you've ever had your team do a personality profile, here's a bunch of them while I'm talking to you. You can see what I'm talking about here. If you've ever had your team do a personality profile and you look at that recognition on the face when they start reading what their profile looks like, that's the picture of awareness. Oh my goodness, that's me. Wow, that's me down to a T. But what's even more magic, if you like, is when they read the profiles of their teammates. And they realize right there and then that we're not all alike. We don't all think alike. I'm not crazy. I'm just not you. And I think differently, right? So that cognitive diversity. And that's invaluable in and of itself, right? When we realize that our teammates might not think like we do. We come at the world from different perspectives. So if nothing else, that's one big thing that you will get from assessment profiles is a high level of awareness. What happened? A high level of awareness. Secondly, what profiles will bring to the table. Secondly, what profiles will bring to the table is they will give you a look into preferences, the preferences of these individuals. What traits do they bring to the table? How do they want to be approached? So, of course, these are not going to give you a look into the gene pool. You're not going to figure out what a person's personality is right down from alpha to omega, but it will give you an idea of how these people show up. It will give you an idea of what their kind of major or main traits are. And that, to me, is an invaluable tool, right? So there's a whole slew of these things. Anybody in here done Myers-Briggs? Yeah, Myers-Briggs. Anybody DISC? Okay, so these are the big ones. Enneagram, Big Five is now all of a sudden popular again. People seem to love the Big Five. They say they like the science behind it. What else have we got? Gallup, Strength Finders, Insights, HBDI, Kersey, and the list goes on. And I've probably done every single one of these over and over again. So yes, I find them really, really helpful. And if you haven't done it, I would strongly recommend just get your team to do it, right? Whether it's MBTI or DISC or whatever. Some of these personality profiles use colors. Anybody familiar with the colors? Okay. DISC, I think, uses colors now. HBDI uses colors. Insight uses colors. And why do they use colors? Well, some people think colors are kind of like childlike, but they're not really. It's actually a very good idea. And the idea behind colors is, for those of you in here who have done your MBTI, if I were to ask you right now what your type is, some of you might know and others might go, I'm not right, can't remember. Was an IS something, something, right? Or an ENTJ, I'm not really sure what the letters are. MBTI, by the way, are 4 letters. But if you do something that is color coordinated, like the disc, for instance, and you do that with a whole bunch of people in the workplace, it's easier to say, I'm a green, or I'm a red, or I'm a yellow. So that's the reason colors are used. And in saying that, I want to do a little exercise right now, and I want to ask your permission to play along with me so we can just get an idea, high-level, simple idea of what an assessment might look like. Are you willing to do that? Okay, thank you so much for being so kind. And we're going to take a look at the colors. So we're going to start with these 4 basic colors. And I am going to ask you, once I've populated each one of these boxes with some basic traits, then and only then am I going to ask you, which box do you believe or do you think you might identify with more, right? Now, before we even start this little game, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, oh, but I'm in all of the boxes. I know you're going to say that, or some of you are. Or I can relate to 3 boxes, and I'm going to say back to you, I know, I get that, but I also believe that you probably lean more into one box than you do any of the others. Even if it's just by one trait, you might be in all of the boxes, but you're probably going to lean more into one than you do the others. So just play along with me, and let's go through all the traits, and then I'll ask for a raise of hands. All right. Let's start with cool blue. If you are a cool blue, you probably show up as being cautious, somewhat precise in your ways, deliberate, questioning. You like to ask a lot of questions. And you need to ask a lot of questions if you're going to be precise and deliberate. And formal. You probably come across as somewhat formal until somebody gets to know you. Right? And if you identify with being a cool blue, you're probably an introvert. Yeah? All right. If, on the other hand, you're a fiery red, that would be me, you can come across a little competitive, demanding. You can dig your heels in and come across as being determined, strong-willed, and willful. And if you can identify with being a fiery red, then you're probably an extrovert, right? Then we have earth green. Earth green are those very calm, relaxed folks, and they come across more as caring, encouraging, sharing, relaxed, and somewhat patient. We love an earth green. And earth greens probably identify as introverts. And then last, but certainly not least, you know who you are, the sunshine yellows, who probably when they sat down today, started talking to the person to the left and to the right immediately and already know them on a first name basis. And they are the social, dynamic, demonstrative, enthusiastic, persuasive types. And they probably identify as extroverts. Yeah? So this is just basic 4 steps. So I'm going to ask you nicely, if you think you identify more with blue than you do the rest, can you just raise of hands for me? We have quite a few blues in here. Take a look around. We have quite a few blues. All right. Thank you so much. How about fiery reds? Oh, okay. More than I imagined for some reason. And how about our earth greens? All right, we've got quite a few earth greens in here. Beautiful. We got any sunshine yellows? Yay! Yay for the sunshine yellows. Whoop, whoop. All right, so what we have here is, let's just take blue for an example, simply because they're the first quadrant up there. If you're a blue, for example, we had quite a few blues in here, you're having your best day when you're cautious, precise, deliberate, questioning, and formal. Why is that? Well, they're your defaults. That's what you default to nicely, right? That's your comfort zone, folks. So you're having a good day when you are in these traits or when you're demonstrating these traits. However, if you're working directly, let's say, with a sunshine yellow might not be having their best day because they just might see you as stuffy, indecisive, suspicious, cold, and reserved. Oh, yeah, exactly. We don't see ourselves as others see us, right? We're aware of that. We normally don't see ourselves as others see us. So when we're having our best day, somebody else isn't, right? And that's how that works. How about fiery red? Fiery red's on top of things. Fiery red's heated up, they're having a great time, they're demanding and determined, unless, of course, they're working with an earth green, and those poor earth greens see an aggressive, controlling, overbearing, bossy, intolerant individual. And they're not having it. They're frustrated and they're upset, right? And so it goes. Earth green. Earth green's having a great day until they work with a fiery red. And a fiery red might see, sorry, earth greens, somebody who's more docile, bland, plodding, reliant, and stubborn. And let's not stop there. Because sunshine yellow is always on, right? But everybody else around them might not be. Because they might be seeing an excitable, frantic, indiscreet, flamboyant, hasty individual. And this is just a very high level, simple idea of how we can step on each other in life, really, or in the workplace. What makes us happy does not necessarily make everybody else happy. And this is where triggers can come into play. This is where we can trigger each other. And what do I mean by triggering people? Frustrating people. People get annoyed. People get short-tempered. And when we're triggered, we tend to armor up. Armor up, by the way, is a Brené Brown phrase. She loves to talk about armoring up. And armoring up is quite the opposite of being what we spoke about initially, which is vulnerable, leaning into uncertainty, being empathetic. You can't be any of those things if you're armored up. Because just imagine somebody walking around in a suit of armor. You're clunky, you're heavy, you're impenetrable, and you're on the defense. And that's what tends to happen when we get triggered by other human beings. And when we're armored up, our triggers are going crazy. We end up in what I call a box of self-deception. We put ourselves in the self-deception box. And what's the self-deception box? The self-deception box is where we other, is where we sort, is where we call ourselves those against us, them and us, right? And in our heads, when we're frustrated, when we get, when we allow people to get under our skin, because they don't get under your skin, we allow it, right? So when we allow people to get under our skin, we go into this box of self-deception, and in there, what we tend to do is we overemphasize the other person's less desirable qualities. We all do it, folks, unless, of course, we've got some automatons in the room. And we, at the same time, overemphasize our good qualities. So it might look something like this. Those individuals who have managed, or we've allowed them to get under our skin, we're now seeing them as being selfish and lazy or controlling, rude, disorganized. These are all of the labels, all of the toxic labels that we manage to come up with about the other person when we're othering. And in the meantime, we're looking at ourselves as being this good, generous, hardworking, intelligent, able-bodied, kind individual. right? For the psychologists in the room, we may call that, what's it called? Another name for it. The fundamental attribution error, I think it's called. But we do others, them and us. And it's not a good thing. It's never a good thing when we other, right? It's never a good thing. And when we go into this self-deception box, we tend to also go into what we call a cycle of collusion. So what's a cycle of collusion? Well, we're going to take a look. A cycle of collusion is just that. It's a cycle. It's a feedback loop, right? It's a feedback loop that will just keep going on and on and on until we do something about it. So first of all, in our cycle of collusion, as you'll see, there's going to be 4 areas. What I see, I tend to do. So I see something and then I act upon it. And then you see what I do and then you act upon that. So let's take a look. I see something, somebody gets under my skin, I'm extremely frustrated. So my perception of them based on my lens. What do I mean by my lens? Anybody? My mental filters, right? Do you know what I mean by mental filters? I'm seeing you through my lens. My lens is very limited. My lens is who I am. My lens is my background, my environment, my gender, my age, my values, my beliefs. My lens is self-limiting. And that's how we judge people, through our lenses. We all have a lens. We all judge people through our lens. But our lenses are distorted because they're our lens, not your lens, my lens. So I see something, something happens, I'm using my lens now to judge you, right? And based on how I judge you, I do an action, I do something. My actions take place based on what I've seen through my lens. And then to further this, further complicated, you then see my actions through your lens, right? So you now see my actions through your lens, and you're now judging my behavior through your lens. So we've got this distortion of lenses, and then you do your action based on what you see. So that's what we call a cycle of collusion. So let's put some context around it to make it a little bit easier. And I'm going to ask this gentleman here, may I ask what your name is? Tors? Tors? Tors, okay, I hope I'm not butchering that too badly. All right, so can I use you as an example, Tors, in this next deal? So we're going to start from what Tors does. So Tors, let's say, works for me. I'm his boss. And Tors has brought to me 3 times in a row projects that are late. Brought a project in late initially, then 2 weeks later he brings another one to me, it's late. And then 2 weeks after that, he brings another one in, it's late. So through my lens, I see, no offense, Tors, because I don't know you and it's not personal, I see a lazy, disorganized, uncommitted, incompetent Tors. Right? 3 times he's brought this into me, and 3 times I'm starting to get more and more annoyed. And that's what my lens may allow me to see. My distorted, self-limited lens. So based on thinking that, on seeing that, what do? I act upon that. And my actions might look something like this. I would never do this, by the way. I would never criticize somebody publicly, but I've seen it done too many times. I've seen people called out in front of the colleagues way too many times. So I might criticize Tors publicly. I might micromanage him. I might decide to sit next to him and breathe down his neck and make his life miserable. It happens, folks. I might stop giving him really cool projects. And I may say, well, he's not capable, so I'm not going to give them to him. And if I treat him that way, what do you think he might see? What do you think you might see, but without putting you on the spot? If you're treated that badly, okay. Okay, I've lost faith and I don't have any confidence in his abilities. And that's a very, thank you, Taurus, that's a very nice way of putting it, because he's probably seeing a demeaning, controlling, toxic person who's really being mean. Because who wants to be treated like that? Who wants to be called out in public? Who wants to, right? So based on what he sees, then his actions take place. And what actions am I going to get for somebody who feels that I'm demeaning, controlling, and somewhat toxic? Probably not many. He's probably going to continue to deliver those projects late, because why should anybody go out of the way and do anything differently if that's how they're being treated? Right? So it's a cycle of collusion, and we're both in it, and we do this. We're probably at any given time in a cycle of collusion, folks. Right? We're in this cycle and it's toxic. So what do we do about it? How do we prevent it from happening? Or how do we step out of it once we're in it? Right? How do we prevent this from happening and step out of it once we're in it? Well, one of the things that I strongly suggest is assume best intent. And as human beings, we tend not to do that. We get frustrated, right? We're triggered. And humans are triggered. Unless you've worked very, very, very hard, then, or unless you're an earth green, maybe you don't get triggered, right? But normally, human beings become triggered. We defend ourselves. It's right back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Fight, flight, or freeze. So we become triggered. But if we can take a deep breath, step back, and assume best intent, then we're on our way to not creating or stepping out of a cycle of collusion. The first thing we need to do in a case like this is pause, because there's power in the pause. Did you know that? There's a lot of power in the pause. There's freedom in the pause. Because when we don't pause, we act out of default. If we can pause, if we can step back and take a pause and recollect, then things will get done. And we can do it within split seconds. Things will get done so much easier. We can start with our most generous interpretations. What's another definition of our most generous interpretations? Empathy. Inject some empathy. And empathy is a skill. And it's a skill absolutely not just worth learning, but again, like I said earlier on, if you're a leader, you owe it to your people to know how to show empathy. And empathy is not this soft, squishy thing that we think about. It's something that we need when we're working with other human beings, right? So show some empathy. Remind yourself that you're using a very different mental filter. I don't think like you. I'm not crazy. I'm just not who you are. So I need to step back and realize that. Right? And I don't know your why. Well, I could if I asked, right? But if I'm going to stand around and make assumptions all day long, I'm not going to know your why. Why are you doing that? There's probably a good reason why you're doing what you're doing. And then own your part. Own your part. Where do you fit into this? How are you showing up for people? So when something's not going completely right, how are you showing up? So body language. I can't remember what those numbers are, but there are numbers out there that say we speak 57% of the time with our body. And I think it's 30% of the time, or 30-something% is our tone of voice. Words are just a mere 7%. So how are we showing up? What are we intimating through our bodies when we're talking to people? How does our tone sound? We could be, let it begin with you, right? What's your part? Where do you fit into this? Always ask yourself that. Am I closing down? Am I shutting down? What assumptions am I making? right? That's a whole training in and of itself, assumptions, right? We could do a whole class on assumptions, but we should never make assumptions about people. Heuristics, I think the individuals in here who spoke about heuristics yesterday in his class, the quick ways of thinking of things, we need that. Our brain needs to figure out what heuristics are. But when it comes to individuals and we're assuming something based on a shortcut, stop it. Just simply ask them, this is what I think is happening. What say you, right? Let's get rid of assumptions if we can. And remember, it takes two to tango. It takes two to tango, folks. But it only takes one to break the cycle of collusion, right? It only takes one to break that cycle. And when we practice kindness and compassion, let's never, ever get kindness and compassion mixed up with being a doormat. It's very, very different, right? Because if we can practice kindness and compassion and still be firm and still be direct and give feedback, then we are the ones who are going to profit. It's always going to be a win-win. It will always be a win-win. So, on a lighter note, a blue, a red, a green, and a yellow are going up in an elevator. Right, what does this look like? A green, a red, a yellow, and a red are going up in an elevator. The blue will stand there, mentally calculate the combined weight of all of the passengers and compare that to that big marker on the elevator and see the weight restrictions and probably go, nah, I'll take the next one. A red will walk into the elevator and just hold on and keep pushing that button until the door closes and they get to their floor. The green, on the other hand, might hold nicely the open door and wait for everybody to come in, nice and slowly and patiently. Remember, the greens are very patient. And then we have our sunshine yellows. And the sunshine yellows are so excited because they see it as an opportunity to catch up and have a chit-chat with strangers in the elevator and even keep the door open as these strangers are walking off the elevator and holding everybody else back. But that's a sunshine yellow for you. So, ladies and gentlemen, in summary, what we covered here this morning is personalities in the workplace. We took a little look at assessment profiles. We talked about triggers and how we can get triggered. Self-deception box, how we end up in a box of self-deception, which then puts us into a cycle of collusion, and how to prevent the cycle of collusion from taking place and owning our part. If you would like any of those handouts, you're more than welcome to take a copy of the QR code and I'll send them to you. In the meantime, thank you so much. And if you have questions, I'd love to answer them. Thank you. Yes, please. Yes. 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 Okay. So, good question. I'm asked here, this individual up front has taken the disc before, and the question is, it's a great question because it doesn't just apply to the disc, it applies to all of these. Once you've taken an assessment profile, do they ever change, right? And the answer is yes, because we change. We change based on our environments. There are parts of the Myers-Briggs, I know we're not talking about Myers, we're talking about DISC here, but there are parts of the Myers-Briggs that they say never change, for instance. If you're born an introvert or an extrovert, so that would never change. However, the other areas can change. They change with growth. We grow, we change, we become different people in our environment. So yes, you're very welcome. Anybody else? No? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Thanks for showing up. Thank you very much.